to strengthen our neighborhood, and we need to realize how resource-rich this neighborhood is and how close our competitors and our adversaries are in the region.
She keeps saying that we just want to be your friend. We're friendly. We're partners. Trust us. You know, we've always been your friend. We've always been here for you. And those are such egregious lies. And she's a snake. And she speaks with forked tongue. And it's gross. It's absolutely gross. And to be here in El Salvador living with people that are friendly and lovely and God-fearing and Bitcoin-loving, and they're working hard. You think this schmata up there in Washington, D.C. with their big brass buttons and medals, and they're, you know, I'm going to go down there and be friends with them and steal all the lithium. It's gross. You should get a real job. You're disgusting. I'm ashamed. As an American, you made me vomit.
Well, so the point is she did bring up the lithium supplies, that the vast majority of the, vast quantity is from the region that is the backyard for America. And what she's referring to, of course, is Bolivia. And I mean, the strange thing is, like, she doesn't go into it. She just mentions that it's there in the backyard and that the U.S. must secure it. But of course, a few years ago, this was a big conspiracy theory, as the likes of David Ignatius and the Washington Post would have called it, when there was a coup, many say orchestrated by Southcom, one might say, against Evo Morales, the elected leader of Bolivia, who had to flee, and he's only alive today because of Mexico, because Obrador sent the Air Force, the Mexican Air Force jet, to rescue him. But what was going on at the time, and by the way, Elon Musk even made a joke about it as one of the largest private companies consuming lithium for batteries for his electric vehicles, that the coup was about the lithium supplies there in Bolivia. The reason being that not to steal their supplies, but to prevent them from doing a deal with China, because apparently Evo Morales was going to do some sort of deal for the commodities in Bolivia, including lithium, with China. So apparently this was the conspiracy theory. But the fact that she's like pointing it out, that we must stop China from getting access, and you're like, well, we all remember that, right? So like, it's just weird that when you see the face of your neighbor who thinks you're their backyard and that you must, like, it's a neighbor from hell, as you said. Like, you get into the car with this psycho killer and you're like, wait, no, stop smiling like that, just like Ted Bundy did. Stop pretending to act vulnerable. You know, Ted Bundy, when you bring him up, he was a handsome, charming guy, but he acted vulnerable, most importantly. That's how he got those women who he murdered as a serial killer into his car. He put a fake cast on his arm. And he's like, oh, you know, and he would go onto the university campus and he would say, oh, can you help me put my books in my car, my book bag? Oh, and these women would be like, oh, he's so handsome and charming and he's vulnerable. I'm gonna get in the car. Well, she said the same thing. It's like she used that phrase of like, we're the last 20 yards. Like, we're so vulnerable because our neighbors, but our backyard has so many resources. So we're vulnerable. Come help us.
Yeah, and next thing you know, it's rub the lotion on or it gets the hose again. You know, this is a horror film with the American generals. You know, the thing that struck me also was how she started it off by saying South America, Latin America, Central America, their natural resources are off the chart, right? So here's the come on. Here's the sales pitch. You know, here's, you know, the TV midnight advertising, General Laura Richardson. It's like, come on, yeah, it's off the charts, all these natural resources. Wink, wink. So we're gonna, we're our friends in our backyard. We're just gonna set up a little, you know, military base, and we're gonna start stealing that stuff because we're friends. And Americans will be like, oh, 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 woo, 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 woo. Free stuff, free stuff. And it just goes on and on, decade after decade.
Well, it's more of a sign of also insecurity. It's over. We've already been talking about this. We've tracked it for the last few, 4 or 5 years, is deglobalization and de-dollarization. It started obviously with the Thucydides trap. It started really in earnest with the Belt and Road. I just mentioned the Belt and Road, and that started in 2013 when China, very cleverly figured out, basically their de Gaulle moment, right? Because Charles de Gaulle famously sent the French naval ship into the New York harbor to collect the $300 million worth of gold in 1969 and 1968. And that triggered what happened is the US defaulted on their gold obligations and converted to an all-fiat world because the US owed France $300 million. So here was China with a stockpile of trillions of dollars of US debt from this trade relationship. And they realized, and they understood that they weren't going to actually receive the money for all the goods they sent. So what they did is they got some other sucker at the global geopolitical poker table, the trade table, to take their dollars instead. And that was the Belt and Road. So they're like, it's a game of hot potato trying to get rid of basically Ted Bundy's fake arm cast.
But what's phenomenal is that, and this hasn't dawned on the Pentagon yet, is of course Bitcoin is unconfiscatable. And El Salvador is rapidly putting reserves into Bitcoin, unconfiscatable Bitcoin. And they're doing so, and they'll continue to do so. So here you have this U.S. general, setting the stage for a hostile raid of Latin America, another one, or then another massive hostile raid of some of the other countries' resources, so Americans can continue to be, getting free stuff. And they're going to show up, and they'll show up, and they'll be like, "Give us all your stuff," and they'll be like, "Well, it's all on Bitcoin." And it's unconfiscatable. So tough luck, imperial colonizing jerks. Get lost because we've got unconfiscatable Bitcoin.
But it's also deglobalization and de-dollarization, as I said. I mean, she referred to all of the oil in the region. And what she meant was Venezuela, which we have cut off from SWIFT, and being able to sell their oil. Same with Iran, same with Russia. So we're cutting off all the oil supplies which back our dollar, which therefore is destroying the dollar. And then you seize those reserves from Russia. It's just the serial killer is losing their mind. This is the point where Ted Bundy got caught. When he starts to all the bodies and the corpses and the fake arm casts are starting to pile up, and he's can't remember whose arm cast is that on the floor? Am I the killer?
Yeah, the Son of Sam serial killer comes to mind. Eventually all these serial killers, they get caught.
Yeah.
And because the trophies that they accumulate because they're egos. Remember, the American serial killing generals are egomaniacs first. And so they like to get their little trophies, but that always ends up working against them. And this could be that time when we have a complete failure by the Pentagon to take over in Central America and walk away with free stuff because of Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is the savior, and El Salvador is the savior. And you put two saviors together and you end up pushing aside, no matter how many battleships show up, you get schmata, you get nothing.